In this match masterclass, I am showcasing why you should make this, the humble catapult, one of your best friends, no matter what the weather conditions are. It's often something that is a bit scared to be picked up in winter, and I'm going to show you that you could be missing out on a few fish. Right then, let's get straight into it. Winter fishing. We all get a little bit afraid of using the catapult. Before we do anything, I am going to apologise. I'm going to put my hood up because it's absolutely freezing. This lake was actually frozen. All the lakes around here were completely frozen last week. We were going to film this then, but we've had to wait a week for them to defrost. So that gives you an indication of how cold it is. And I understand why people are afraid to pick this up, because you know, in our heads, lots of us think that it's a summer method. And don't get me wrong, the catapult is mega in the summer. You can be really aggressive with it, feed lots of bait, you get loads of competition going. And yeah, I can see why it's predominantly thought of as a summer method, but there's definitely a place for using your catapult in winter fishing. But you do have to just think about what you're doing. So I've had a little cast just to confirm how far. Oh, there we go, we've got one straight away. Now, I won't lie, I did feed some maggots for about 3 or 4 minutes, I'm going to say, before we started fishing, just to get my eye in of how far I'm catapulting my bait out, because it's super important to be accurate, and 2, just to get a little bit of competition there. So hopefully we could be in for a good day. I'm actually fishing at the old stables lake, and I haven't been here for probably 10 years, I'm going to say, but I won one of my first ever matches I won was here, and I think this place sort of got me into match fishing, so I owe it a lot. And coming back, it's a lovely lake. You've got a boathouse to my right, overhanging trees. It's really well looked after. The new owner since I first fished it. We've just spoken to him this morning, really nice chap. So lovely to come back and see how the fishing has progressed in 10 years. Like I said, it was good then. If it stays like that, it could be even better. And there we go. A fish to start with. Lovely condition, but he's absolutely freezing. A complete block of ice. So I'm going to not hold it too long. I'm going to get it straight back in there, and we'll go back and have another go. Now, there's plenty to talk about. I will go through rigs and baits and everything at the moment, but first of all, we need to talk about why you're using your catapult. Now, it's super important to get bait falling through the water. If you've watched any of the underwater stuff, like the Guru stuff, the stuff that we've done, the Matrix stuff, all of it indicates that basically the most attractive thing to fish this time of year is bait falling through the water. Now, obviously you can tap it in through a little pot or something like that, but I just think with a catapult, you just create a little bit of a bigger spread and you get them moving when sometimes they don't want to move. And it's all about that bait falling through. That's going to be the consistent thing here, and you need to mimic that with your rigs and make everything the same. But basically, once bait gets to the bottom that we've seen in the underwater footage, it becomes pretty unattractive. So it's all about just constantly trying to create some more interest in your swim. But we're not talking absolutely lashing baiting like you would in summer. You know, if I was fishing shallow now, I'd have fed 4 or 5 times by this cast. We're talking about just every few minutes, maybe even every 5 minutes, dripping in a few maggots. And I do mean a few, like when I'm feeding. Oh, there's another one. When I'm feeding, I'm literally feeding like maybe 6 maggots, something like that. Literally not a lot at all. And you can see there, it's making a difference, because clearly it's very attractive. Basically what happens in winter, we all know, lakes go super clear. Oh, lost it. Probably talking to you there. I'm not paying attention. But what happens is lakes go super clear, and that's why I think the main attraction to fish is movement. So when it's really coloured in the summer, I don't think it's as important because they can't see it. They can't see as much what's going on. But when they're like this, basically sight feeding is everything, and it's that last little section of when your bait's just settling is when you're most likely to get yourself a bite. And try and keep things really nice and accurate if you can. And this isn't a sales plug, this is honestly the Matrix catapult in the heavy elastic. I don't know if it's the pouch, the elastic, or what it is, but they are by far the most accurate of catapults. If you don't believe me, get yourself a couple of different catapults and put that to the test. The grouping of the bait is so much neater, and that's really, really important when you're trying to keep fish in a relatively small area. And then all we're doing in the fishing sense is, obviously, because we've just said that the most attractive thing is bait falling through the water. That's the whole reason why we're using a catapult. What we're doing is we're just every now and again, we're just lifting and dropping the rig. Sometimes we'll lift it completely out and lay the whole rig in, but what we're doing mostly is just a little float length and just lift and drop the rig. And like I said, every now and again we'll put a few more maggots in, 6, 8 maggots. Try and keep that coming, because you're definitely having a play on sight. That's all it's about. And the other thing to mention as well is, although this has started very, very well, what I am going to do is, it's winter fishing. Winter fishing never stays good from the start to finish. So what I do is I have myself sort of 2 or 3 lines. So this line here is in open water. Down here to my left, I've got a lovely bed of reeds. So every now and again, at the same distance, I'm just going to fish somewhere down there, and it's a bit shallower down there. So again, depth of water can sometimes be really important to find out where them fish are. You might find throughout the day that they move in shallower or deeper water. And then I'm going to have a third line, which is going to be a different bait, which we'll come on to in a moment, and that's just going to be to my right. So what that's given me is lots and lots of options. So it gives me a chance to, 1, rest the swim, and 2, fish a few different depths as well. Because what I don't want to do is get really excited and think, oh, there's loads of fish. I've just had 2 bites pretty quick, and then you plough too much bait in and you ruin it. By having other swims, then you just give them a little bit of a rest, and sometimes that's super important. So let's see what happens in the next few minutes. I had those 2 bites really quick, and I haven't had one in the next 3 or 4 minutes I've been talking to you. So let's see if we can put a few fish together. And then obviously we've got to look about the rigs, the baits, trying these other swims, plenty to look at. But yeah, don't be afraid to pick your catapult up no matter how cold it gets. I like it when a plan comes together. The fishing's been kind at the moment, and doesn't always happen when it's as cold as this. My feet are starting to get cold now as well, but catching a few fish should warm me up hopefully. And it's just been nice getting the odd bite, not as quick as those first 2. They were exceptionally quick. And yeah, fishing, definitely winter fishing, definitely sort of can fight back at times. You think you've got something perfect, and then the fish have other ideas and they go elsewhere. But yeah, cracking little venue, nice to be back like I said, and some little carp on the show. We'd caught a couple a bit bigger than this as well, so proper good conditioned fish. They are wicked. That's perfect for what you want to catch this time of year, and I can imagine this place is pretty mental in the summer. So let's get that slipped back and let's talk you through the rigs that I'm using if you are going to fish in this way. Like I said, with a catapult, you could do it with a toss pot on the end of the sprinkle pot and sprinkle it in that way if you don't feel that you're accurate enough or confident enough to use a catapult, because I do get it. I understand why people are afraid to pick it up, but you really shouldn't be, and hopefully we're going to prove it. Right, elastic wise is orange slick. Again, you just match that to the size of the fish you're fishing for. Actually, this rig, you've probably seen a lot of my match. I don't really change my rigs that much. I think you can just overcomplicate fishing so much of the time, and you really don't need to. So I've got 016 mainline, 2 number 8 back shot. I use them in all my rigs. And then you can see here, I have got a Matrix Finesse Carbon in 0.4 gram. The only important thing there is it needs to be a carbon stem float. I'll explain that while I'm fishing so you understand why it needs to be a carbon stem, but that's super important. 0.4 gram is just because we're fishing about 4 foot of water, so that's about right. Normally I say 0.1 gram of a float for a foot of water, so that's how you work that one out. And then also the shotting pattern is reasonably important as well, but it's the shotting pattern I use so often again, and it's the spaced out bulk. So the gap at the top here is much shorter, and as you get towards the hook end, your gap between your shot gets big, and that's because it gets your bait down. We are trying to catch these fish on the bottom, even though we're feeding with a catapult, so it gets it down there. You get a lovely slow fall at the end. So I start off with some number 9s, and then go 10s, and these last two are number 11s. So really nice slow fall at the end of your rig. A 4-inch hook link and a size 18 hook. The hook link is 014, so slightly lighter, finesse down to winter, and a size 18. So let's go. Actually, and what I will do now, we might not use it in today's video, but I have also got behind me a second rig, which is because we are fishing with a catapult. The nature of it is they could come up in the water, although we're not feeding regularly, and it's unlikely in winter. It does happen, and I have had sessions where actually that's wicked and it's better than fishing on the bottom. So I do have a second rig, same elastic, same line, everything like that. The float's slightly different. It's a 0.2 gram, again with a carbon stem, and with a shotting pattern I just spaced that out even further. So if we need to catch, or we're getting some funny bites, we're not hooking them, then I would use my shallow rig and explore that. And actually, I've been a bit lazy today, but this is going to double up with my rig if I try down there, because it's a lot shallower down near those reeds. So I think that's going to come really good later on. I'm going to keep priming that. So this is actually doubling as my shallow rig and my rig that I'm going to fish down there. So basically, like I said, all you need is those 2 rigs up. You could have 3 rigs. You could have, you know, your shallow and then 2 different, sorry, your deck rig and then 2 different shallow rigs. But realistically, most of the time I find that fishing right on the bottom is the way forward. But it's all about, like I said, I've been saying for this video, it's all about that movement. So a single maggot goes on, and now we repeat the process. But before I go out, I am just going to feed my other lines, because I did say that winter fishing has a great knack of fighting back, and at any moment you feel that, you know, those fish could just disappear and you need somewhere else to go. So just keeping those lines ticking over without no interruption and not catching any fish off them yet, you can definitely get another run of fish together, and then that just gives you a chance to rest this line and sort of keep switching between the two. So that's really important in winter. So this is why you need a carbon stem float, because when you're going out there, you flick your rig away. Now I just hold it nice and still, let it all come swinging back into me, and then I lower the float in. Now you'll find that lots of your bites come, well, if you're going to get one, not always, but most of them, oh, a little indication there, I think are going to come within the first 20 to 30 seconds, maybe even quicker, of that rig settling, because like I said, you're catching the eye right at the end of your fall. That's where the fish are sitting, and so many times that you see, you just lift your rig up, you drop it down there, it all settles and it goes under. And what that would be, there'd be a fish there looking at the bait. Like I said, it's not really that attractive sitting on the bottom, you know, although they will be grazing and feeding on the bottom. Certainly if you can time it right to lift one, drop it just as one's coming past, they just can't resist, they snatch at it. So you do sort of increase your time that you lift and drop. So for me, I'm just sort of half a float to float length out of water, just drop it down and let it all set. And like I said, I think if you are going to get a bite, it's certainly quite soon, but you have to be realistic. I don't think that you could just lift and drop every 20 seconds, because I think you do run the risk of spooking them. But certainly put a bit of movement into your rig, because you're trying to create, ooh, a little bit of an indication then, but not positive enough to strike. And then like I said, with the feeding, you do have to sort of learn as you go into the session, I guess, because you never quite know how many fish they are. Like, so I'm really new to this lake since it's like 10 years ago, as I said, so I don't know how many there is, and there's clearly quite a few to get a few bites as quick as we did. But I am just gonna feed again. I don't actually mind feeding over the top of my rig. Like sometimes, you know, in shallow fishing you'd feed, then you'd ship out and try and catch one, and But with this, I really don't mind feeding on top of my rig and then lift and drop. Now, you got to remember, maggots sink roughly sort of 8 seconds a foot, something like that. So, oh, I just had a bite. Those maggots I've just catapulted in, definitely are not on the bottom when I got that bite. It's 4 foot here, so you think realistically it's taking 30 seconds-ish, I would say, for those maggots to get to the bottom, to where my rig is. So if you can time it sometimes to when those hit the bottom, just to lift your, because I think they're probably hitting the bottom not far off now. Hopefully this second swing in, I might get another chance. But it's so weird how often that you saw it just on that will go there. Those maggots hit the water and you get a bite. I don't know if it's sand or something like that, because like I said, there was absolutely no way that bite came as my first lot of maggots hit the water. They just don't sink that quick. They do sink really slow. So you think if I'm feeding every 3 or 4 minutes, but it's taking 30 seconds for that bait to get to the bottom when I'm fishing maggots, you know, there's only sort of 2.5, 3 minutes at a time where there's not something falling, and in that period I'm trying to just lift my float, drop my float. So there's always something going on, there's always something trying to grab their attention. And actually the 2 bites that we've had earlier on pretty much come within the first 5 seconds of me lifting and dropping. So I'm really keen to keep a bit of movement on this rig, and all the time not forgetting your other lines. It's super important to have other options. So that one down there, it's a little bit shallower down there, like I said, and then I have got another line just in open water over there, so a couple that I can switch to. But we're getting bites, that's the most important thing. Like I said, you just need to keep thinking about what's happening, reading your swim, how much do I need to feed, how often do I need to feed, and you should keep bites coming pretty much all day in the right situation. There we go, just like that again after some movement. It's so obvious that they're definitely looking for that bait falling through, which is what the whole point of this video is about. So I don't think you can prove it any better than that you just need to make sure that you're catching their attention. This one's really pulling. I don't know if there's any bigger fish in here or not. Like I said, it's got a balanced setup, so it should be able to deal with anything that's a little bit bigger. But yeah, this water's gone really clear again, and that's the whole point about it. It's why I think that the catapult is so important. Where people are putting it away, you really don't need to be putting it away. Come on, let's see if we can get this in. But yeah, it's just playing this fish, and when my elastic goes underwater I can see perhaps like 3 or 4 foot, which in a commercial is relatively rare. My pulse line is sort of rolls out a little bit, but yeah, and I'd imagine in the summer this would be completely chocolate brown like they normally are. You can't see anything, and then that's where I don't think that movement is so important. That's where I think that you can lay traps and you can put big cups of ground bait down the edge, and I think bait on the bottom is attractive then, because they're feeding from smell and stuff like that. But as it gets colder, they definitely switch over to sight feeding. It's more just making them grab it. So it's a bit bigger, nice carp. Here we go. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot better. Nice chunky fish. Right in the side there. Let's see if I can unhook. My hands are so cold I can't function properly to unhook it. Right, there we go. We'll hold that one up. I don't really want to hold it up, but it is worth showing you because it is a really nice fish. Here we go. There we go. Oh, it is freezing. But yeah, another one, just as sort of the bait pretty much just got to the bottom, it then snatched it and grabbed it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this one slipped back. We're going to go back out there, show you just once more what we mean about setting the trap, how it's going in, everything like that. And then I think I'm going to try and catch a few fish and go perhaps try the other spots, because I have, like I said, just been, it's so important. I can't stress enough how much you need to just keep other areas ticking over. Like that one. And the baits I've got with me, I may as well do it while we're out of the water, is my main attack most of the time at this time of year, as is everyone. Who doesn't go fishing without maggots? So hooking the maggots on couldn't be any more simple. I actually go through the fin end of the maggot just because it's got the most hook point exposed then, and that's the best way to hook them. God, my hand is really cold. So we'll go out. And then the other bait that we've got is here. We've got F1 sweet pellets. It's the only pellet that I use in winter, the sort of lovely sweet flavour. And I normally, well, why I feed two different baits is because, one, you don't know what's in the lake if you're not too sure. Like I said, I don't know how many roach and that were present in here. And two, you never quite know what's going to work better. I mean, 9 times out of 10 this time of year, I think maggots work better. But having that pellet line, I almost have it as a bit of a throwaway line. Sometimes you can catch some bigger fish, or sometimes it just is the better bait. So, like I said, the F1 sweet pellet definitely make sort of the most appealing pellet that I can think of. So we'll keep that feeding out there, and then we're going to lower back into our spot. And the reason why I don't feed too much on the open water areas until my pole's out there is because I really do want to try and keep it nice and accurate. So like the marker is so important. So literally, again, just like 6-7 maggots, that probably was, right around your float. Keep everything as good as they can, and then just keep that movement. So with that carbon stem, if I lay my whole rig in again, I flick it away, and then I just hold on to it. Now I'd feel any bites all the way down, but then just as it's getting to the bottom, when you lower it in, with the carbon stem floats, you will see those bites all the way down. And with laying your rig in, it's going to feed a few more because we had a few bites, so maybe there's a few fish. But what I'm not going to do is obviously spray it and try and overfeed them. I'm going to feed that edge again, and yeah, don't overfeed it. But as you start to feel your way into the session, you think you definitely can push it a little bit more, because you're understanding that they're definitely taking those maggots as they get to the bottom, because you're learning that. As you know, I've had 2 or 3 now that as the bait's just settled, they've grabbed. So you think, how often is that happening with the freebies as well? And then you start thinking, actually, I haven't got a pool of maggots just sitting on the floor not getting eaten. I'd imagine there's silverfish in that in here as well. So everything eats maggots. You can feed a few more, and hopefully it's sort of showing you that you haven't got to be too worried about using your catapult, even though, like I said, it is absolutely freezing today. Still pick it up with confidence and use it in the right situations can really, really make a difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and catch a few more. Let's see what happens. Might even, like I say, I'm really tempted to try down here by this reed stack, so I might have another one out here and then go and have a fish down there and see if it's any difference. Because the other thing is depth that I mentioned at the start. We're fishing deeper water here, which is obviously quite a good point to start with. But as the day warms up ever so slightly, then as the sun comes around, sometimes they come into the shallow water. There's not too much sun here today, but still be warmer during the day than it would have been at night time. So don't ignore slightly shallow areas as well. But let's see what happens. Let's have a little fish. Like I said, it's been really good so far. It's, like I said, perfect to come back to a venue that I've not been to for a long time. This line is definitely the one, and crazily how often pretty much every bite has come on the settle or as there's a bit of movement. But I did have a go down in the reed stack. I thought that was going to be really good, if I'm honest, and we did have a few fish, so you don't regret having other swims, but it just wasn't as good as this deep line. I think because the sun hasn't really come out today, I think It's just that, it's purely depth. So if I was going to say anything, a couple of things to really think about. Have a couple of different rigs at different depths, and then also have a couple of different rigs for different baits. Now, we haven't also had a bite on the pellet line either, a little one this time. There we go. So we don't have any bites on the pellet line today, but on a different day, we could have had, you know, more fish on the pellet than we did on the maggot. So it's always worth having two, and it's, like I said, always worth having different depths as well, because then once you work out what one's better, you can start putting more and more fish in the net. Now, even saying that, that doesn't mean I'm going to give up on these other swims, because you just never know when they might be handy. But I think we've shown enough now to prove that picking your catapult up in winter definitely is something that people should be thinking about, and everything in this method has definitely come on the settle. So what I've found is better is to flick my rig away from me. Like I said, I've got a carbon stem float, and I'm feeding actually a little bit more bait now as well. I've got a little bit more aggressive with it, just because, well, there was two reasons. One, I caught a couple of roach, so that's, you know, that's indicating, there you go, look again, how good is that on that settle? It's within, I'm gonna say, if I don't get a bite within 20-30 seconds of that float set, and maybe even quicker, maybe even 15-25 seconds, if I don't get a bite in that period of my rig settling fully, I just don't get a bite, and just leaving it sitting there isn't the one in situations like this. And that is the exact reason what this whole video has been about, and it's the exact reason why I'm a big believer in picking your catapult up when other people don't think you should be. You obviously have to be very, very careful not to get carried away and start blasting bait at it, because as quickly as you can make it as good as what you just saw there, you can also ruin it if you just fill it in with bait. So think about how much you're feeding, how often you're feeding. Like I said, I started off with, what was I feeding? Between 4 and 6 maggots, I'm going to say. Now, because, wow, this one's going. How big do they go in here? But because the, you know, the roach situation, and just generally because the fishing was quite good, I think there's obviously a few fish in this lake that are definitely willing to feed. I upped it to maybe, I'm going to say, what did I up it to? I'm probably now feeding 8 to 10, 12 maggots, something like that. So not loads, and obviously I'm not lashing them in if I was trying to catch them shallow, but I'm just feeding them every 2 or 3 minutes, or every time I go in, and putting another few maggots out there, and it has been really, really good. I think other situations, like I said, if I was just to pot in micro pellets all in one go, yes, I would catch a few fish, but definitely as the weather gets colder and the lakes get clearer, it's all about making movement. So even if you're not confident with a catapult and you want to feed micros, that's absolutely fine. But like I said, put a sprinkle lid on, and if you were going to feed, let's say 100 micros, I think you're better to feed 4 micros 25 times than you are just put them all in one go, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to you, because you've got, here we go, look, that's a bigger fish, because you've got all that attraction falling through the water. Clearly it's all about that little bit of attraction falling right at the end there. I'm still catching these fish on the bottom, but if they're not watching it go down and it's forcing them to tilt up and eat it, then I don't think they're eating it. They'll quite happily swim past bait that sits there, but they can't resist something that just makes them tip up, go down, and you catch them. So I hope that you found that useful. It's a block of ice in my hands. I think I'm going to catch a few more, but then I'm probably going to head off home. So we'll end on this one, the biggest fish of the day, caught exactly how I explained it. So I hope you found it useful. Pick your catapult up, don't be afraid of it, and we will see you very soon. And before you do that, don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode.